Welcome back. Well, Indonesia's Attorney General Office has named the Director General of Foreign Trade from the Indonesian Ministry of Trade as a suspect in an alleged corruption act pertaining to the illicit providing of export permits to companies who had not yet passed the requirements to attain those permits. Now, on Tuesday afternoon, Indonesia's Attorney General Esti Burhanuddin, has officially named the Ministry of Trade's Director General of Foreign Trade, with initials IWW, as a corruption suspect. He also named 3 other individuals from palm oil companies as suspects, namely the commissioner of a palm oil products company, Wilmar Nabati Indonesia, a senior manager at a crude palm oil company, Permata Hijau Group, and general manager at Musim Mas, a multinational palm oil company. Now, according to the AGO, the Trade Ministry's Director General of Foreign Trade had issued export permits to these companies when they actually had not met the requirements to supply enough for domestic needs. Now, indeed, in 2021, the government imposed a domestic market obligation in which palm oil companies must sell 20% of their export volume to the domestic market. If they did not do this, they would not be allowed to receive an export permit. Although that domestic market obligation was eventually removed in March, this alleged act of corruption had reportedly led to a drop in palm oil supplies in Indonesia, as this is a key ingredient for the production of cooking oil, which has seen its price surge as of late.
Ditetapkan 4 orang. Yang pertama, pejabat eselon 1 pada Kementerian Perdagangan bernama IWW, Direktur Jenderal Perdagangan Luar Negeri, Kementerian Perdagangan. Dengan perbuatan tersangka telah menerbitkan secara melawan hukum persetujuan ekspor terkait komoditi crude palm oil atau CPO dan produk turunannya kepada Permata Hijau Group, Wilmar Nabati Indonesia, PT Multimas Nabati Asahan, dan PT Musim Mas.
All right, now we're joined by Bhima Yudhistira, the Executive Director of the CELIOS think tank, to discuss what this alleged foul play means for Indonesia's cooking oil industry and relentless efforts to push down prices. Hi, Bhima. Thank you so much for joining us. So, after months of suspicions, and suspense, an Indonesian Trade Ministry official now has been named a suspect, in a corruption suspect, related to palm oil exports. So, what do you think this says about Indonesia's cooking oil industry? Do you think there is an organized structural effort to kind of protect the profits of cooking oil companies, and that this effort is could be involving government officials as well?
So the first time, I would say that this is already been known that the structure of the industry in palm oil and cooking oil in Indonesia seems like oligopoly, or some of the players dominated more than 40% of the market shares. That's the first one. And the second one, when the government introduced the domestic market obligation in the CPO, we already discussed with the Ministry of Trade to warn them that this can be replication of a mistake of the DMO in the coal. Because in the coal sectors, they also apply DMO. When the DMO is not met with the criteria, some of the coal mining company try to bribe, try to lobby to the government so they can have an extra export permit. So this is similar with what happened with the coal DMO as well. So when they're talking about the CPO and then we're talking about the DMO, some of the major companies try to bribe the government officials, try to manipulate the report so they can have more export, because at the time CPO price went very high and disparity between the CPO price in the export and the CPO price in the domestic is very widening. So at the time the government, which is some government official, try to facilitate so the palm oil industry can get much earning during that time in the March.
Right. So, I mean, in a sense, do you think there is a strong link between some government officials and some palm oil companies, that there's this relationship that they have to ensure that these palm oil companies keep their profits? Is that, when you talk about organized structural effort, is that what you're talking about? This sort of cooperation between the companies and some government officials? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, of course, yeah. Mafia, or we call it a cartel in the cooking oil or palm oil industry, is cannot be smooth because there is no government intervention. So there must be a government officials, and we want to see what Attorney General bring to the court. How many government officials inside Ministry of Trade, which is linked to the export permit scandal of CPO. And the second one, we see the suspect of the palm oil scandal at this time is involving general manager, is involving commissioner or top level of the managers. So we will say that this is organized structural that trying to influence the government, and the government official, which is being a suspect with the Attorney General accusation, is also involving as a commissioner in some of the palm oil company. So there is also conflict of interest from the government official, from the head of Director General of the Foreign Affairs Trade in the Ministry of Trade. He also have a conflict of interest because he also worked as a commissioner, active commissioner in palm oil industry or palm oil company. So it's involving a complex structure, how the government and the industry players betraying the people of Indonesia because they're selling higher price of cooking oil while they get benefit or margin when they export the palm oil.
Right, and of course, previously we know that the Indonesian Minister of Trade kept on saying, oh, I'm going to announce the suspects in the cooking oil cartel. I know who they are, but he never announced it. Do you think that maybe he had some knowledge, or the ministry had some knowledge, that people inside the Ministry of Trade was behind this, so that's why they didn't want to open it up yet? Do you think maybe that's what was going on? There's a lot of conflict of interest.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this is all blame also to Minister of Trade, which is Mr. Lutfi, because he also didn't have any control of the internal behavior of the Director General, for instance. So there must be a control, must be accountability, must be comply with the regulation, because the regulation is set by the Ministry of Trade, and this has happened between internal Ministry of Trade. The scandal happened in the internal Ministry of Trade. I think this is all the mistake in the Minister of Trade, and Mr. Lutfi, I think, should be resigned from his job because of this scandal. Because the Attorney General is not putting the fourth person as a witness, but also putting as a suspect of this kind of a CPO permit case. So I think this is all to blame to Mr. Lutfi also. And I think we need a new Minister of Trade which have stronger integrity and also have internal control as well.
Is there maybe something you think he could have done differently, should have done differently, or do you think it's just a matter of he was losing power amongst people who had maybe more lobby, more power, so forth?
I don't think so. Yeah, I think the first thing is, if we look about the history of the DMO regulation, domestic market obligation at the time, and price selling mechanism or HET, harga eceran tertinggi at the time. So we see that there also a consequence. The government already understand if they kept the price and also meet the domestic market obligation, there must be a moral hazard. There must be some companies trying to bribe the government official so they can increase the export supply and also decreasing the demand for the local palm oil suppliers. So there are also consequence. The government, the Ministry of Trade especially, already understand this is a consequence of the policy. But what happened, the story is one month before, the Ministry of Trade tried to announce the mafia or announce the cartel of cooking oil, and it's been a delay. It means like there is no political will to announce who's the mafia or who's buying the cooking oil until the Attorney General take over the case and see the mafia is also inside the Ministry of Trade. I think that's a shame.
Right, so if I'm getting this right, you firmly believe that there is a cooking oil cartel, and that is what's going on behind the cooking oil prices going up.
Yeah, I think also there is a correlation between the cooking oil price and also how the scandal could, because the three of the company alleged involving in this scandal is a big company. It's not a small company. It's a group of the big plantation of the palm oil, and also how they managed to increase the export during the difficult times, during the decreasing supply and some of the cooking oil problems in the distribution channel. So they understand the consequence. If they bribe the government officials, they can export it and get a profit margin. So I think there's a correlation between the lack of supply in the cooking oil, and until today, there is a problem in the cooking oil, especially the non-packaging cooking oil or minyak curah. There's been a waiting line, there's been a lack of the supply, and I think this is all blamed to the cartel. And it's proof that Attorney General, we will wait in the court if there is a proof that Attorney General said this is a part of the cartel, then create some problem in the supply chain of the palm oil and cooking oil in Indonesia.
All right, so there seems to be some foul play going on here, but we're going to delve deeper into exactly how this cooking oil cartel is conducting its illegal activities. We're going to be talking about that after the break. Stay tuned on Jakarta Movers and Shakers.
Kebijakan kita, misalnya penetapan HIT untuk minyak curah, kemudian subsidi ke produsen, ini kita lihat sudah berjalan berapa minggu ini belum efektif. Di pasar saya lihat minyak curah banyak yang belum sesuai dengan HIT yang kita tetapkan. Artinya memang ada permainan.
All right, and as you heard there, that's straight from the president, the Indonesian president. He's saying he also believes that there's foul play in the cooking oil industry in Indonesia. And now we're going to discuss this more with Bhima Yudhistira, Executive Director of CELIOS. Now, as you heard just now, the president himself believes, there is a cooking oil cartel going on. First of all, I want to get your opinion. Do you think the president knew about this for a long time, and should have something been done by the government earlier on? Because we know in 2010, there was a cartel, 20 producers who were fined. This has happened before in 2010. So, the government should have known about this. Could they have done something different in these few years since 2010?
Yeah, I think since 2010, there is no major breakthrough, or there is no major change in terms of the cartel of the cooking oil price. So same players, same structure in the market shares. So this is happening when there's a price of the CPO increase internationally. So when there's a price increase, there is a tendency to export more than to fulfill the domestic demand. So actually, the government already understand about how the cartel is playing during the high price in the seasonal also, because we are having in Ramadan and Lebaran or Eid Mubarak, where there is an increase of the demand 20% during Ramadan and 47% increase of the demand during the Idul Fitri compared with the normal period. So I think the government understands, but the problem is, the domestic market obligation should be applied But instead of applying domestic market obligation, the government changed the subsidies from the cooking oil, which is a packaging cooking oil, minyak goreng kemasan, to minyak goreng curah or cooking oil without the packaging. So this also creating some problem and difficulties because some of the middle class migrated from the high cooking oil with the packaging moving to minyak goreng curah. And it's also increasing demand during the Ramadan, make it very difficult. Because as we see that minyak curah and cooking oil with the packaging have a different controlling system. Cooking oil with packaging, they have a barcode, they have a production number, and the government can follow the distribution channel. But if the government subsidize the minyak goreng curah or cooking oil without the packaging, it's also creating a problem in terms of the controlling. So the mafia actually is not only work in the production level, but also working right now in the distribution channel. So from the producer up to traditional market or up to end of the consumers, there's at least 7 distribution points. In the 7 distribution point, the government cannot have much control of the cooking oil. So the price is kept high or increase, and there is no sense of decreasing oil price. I think after Lebaran, if there is no strong regulation, I think the situation will be the same.
Right. So, well, first of all, I just want to make it clear to our audience. So the way that this cooking oil cartel is operating is that at a distribution level, they're holding back supplies of bulk cooking oil, and that is pushing up prices. That's what you're saying, right?
They're holding the supply in the distribution, but also they right now they packaging minyak curah to minyak goreng kemasan or packaging cooking oil. So this is part of the crime, but I think the bigger crime is during that moment in the DMO, they try to bribe the government officials.
Right. Okay. So, I mean, of course, as we know, the cooking oil industry in Indonesia is an oligopoly, meaning that there's a few large producers that is controlling a big market share in the industry. So, I mean, what can the government do next to prevent such a thing from happening, to prevent such big producers from controlling the whole thing, holding back supplies, doing illegal activities? What can the government do to prevent this oligopoly, Bhima?
There is at least 4 solutions here in the midterm and in the long term. The first one is the government cannot control the price, cannot control the distribution channel if the government, which is they have a block, is not production and then is not controlling the cooking oil. If it is left in the market mechanism, the same problem will be happening the following years. The second one is to break up the company. So the problem in the palm oil industry is they are integrated from the producer of the palm oil until the distribution channel to the traditional market or retail. So they need to break up. If they register as a palm oil company, they might not establish a cooking oil industry, or they not include in the distribution channel. So break up is one of the solutions. The third one is how to evaluate the permit of the land use, because many of the big conglomerates in the palm oil, they use government land. So
Bhima,
if they not meet with the regulation, they need to ensuring that I think they need to evaluate the permit of the land use. And the last one is, I think they need to include state-owned enterprise to play and active as a producer of the cooking oil.
Okay, Bhima, I'm so sorry, but we've run out of time. It's going to Azan right now, as we know, the breaking of the fast. But Bhima Yudhistira, Executive Director of CELIOS, thank you so much for your insights today, and hopefully this issue resolves itself soon.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Thank you, Bhima. All right.